Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Universe Within podcast. This episode of the show is brought to you by the Amazonian Plant Healing Center, the Temple of the Way of Light. It's an organization I've worked with for a number of years. They run ayahuasca retreats of 12 days, 6 ceremonies, working with 4 different curanderos in the Shipibo lineage. And it's a really amazing experience. I've worked there for a number of years, and there's something about the work itself, the integrity, the lineage that's really drawn me to work there, to go into a really deep process myself with working with various plant medicines. And people often ask me where I would recommend people go if they're interested in working with ayahuasca, whether it's for the first time or they've worked with it before in a different setting and they're interested in going deeper. And my answer is always the same. If you're able to make it to Peru, if you have 12 days, the Temple of the Way of Light, there's a real integrity, there's a kind of a communal atmosphere of working with Shipibos who are highly skilled, working with highly skilled facilitators, highly skilled teachers, and really it just creates an environment, a set and a setting that allows people to really feel safe, secure, held, and really able to go into the medicines very deeply. And then with that, having really life transforming experiences. So I would highly recommend it if you're interested in working with medicines. The Temple of the Way of Light, they have a website, templeofthewayoflight.org, and there's also a link in the show notes. So thank you very much for sponsoring the show. In this episode, I sat down with my friend Luis Solarat. Luis actually reached out to me because he was really enjoying the podcast. He had begun dieting plants, also in the Shipibo tradition, and he was coming up to the valley. And we also share a common interest in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so we've been practicing together, doing some different things. But he's a really nice guy, fascinating guy, really interesting story. He directed London Reel's ayahuasca documentary, which was called Reconnect, which is a really excellent film. I'll put the link to that documentary in the show notes. But a really good documentary on ayahuasca and kind of not only the process of ceremonies, but also the integration once the ceremonial process comes to an end. And it was really well done. So if you want to see Luis's work, you can visit it that way. He also has a website and some other things, and I'll put all of those links in the show notes. But it was a really interesting conversation. We talked about that process of making the film Reconnect, some of the other work he's done. We talked about martial arts, jiu-jitsu, his process of now dieting and learning with plants. So it was a really good conversation, and I think you guys will really enjoy it. So as always, if you're able to support the show, that's a really big help for helping me to continue to produce new content, helping to bring on guests, and really getting this show out there. So probably the best way to do that is through Patreon. Patreon gives some really nice benefits, like early access to shows, bonus material, extended footage, Q&As, things like that. So it's a really good way to give, and then also to give something back. It's also possible to donate through direct donation with PayPal. And if you're not able to do that, simply subscribing to the show is also a really big help. So going on the YouTube page, to the Universe Within podcast homepage, subscribing to the show, turning on the notification bell, and liking the video. That's a really big help. And then for the audio version, Apple Podcasts, subscribing to the show, and then leaving a starred rating and a review. That's a really big help. It may seem like a small thing, but it really helps in getting the show out to a broader audience. So for everyone who has supported, thank you very much. And without further ado, here is my conversation with Luis. Cool, man. Well, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Jason.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure.
So you reached out to me because you had heard the podcast, and you went down to outside of Iquitos to diet, yeah, and then you kind of got stuck for the lockdown, the pandemic. So how did you get interested in plants in the beginning?
So I guess it started more in my early 20s, something like that, experimenting with psychedelics on my own. More in a recreational way at the beginning, but then I think I got to listen some of the Terence McKenna talks, and then something changed by listening to him. Kind of, this guy put things together in a way that I never listened and resonate with that before, and the things that he was saying calling my attention, and I start to see these things as different things. Then I got a kit of mushrooms and I started to grow my own mushrooms, and then I started to experiment with that a bit more, and yeah, things happened from there. And then I have a lot of own experimentation and reading a lot about these things and getting more and more into plants. And then suddenly I start to hear about ayahuasca very early at the beginning, and something like, wow, this is the thing. But have a lot of opportunities to drink it, kind of in London where I lived, or with friends. But I always felt that the way was to come to Peru and to do it, at least in the jungle. So I kind of was letting it behind and letting it pass. And then I start to work in films. I end up working in London Real in the media channel. And funny enough, suddenly I'm doing a project with Dennis McKenna, the brothers of Terence, and doing this film, Reconnect. And that was my first time I tried ayahuasca. It was not in Peru, it was in Costa Rica. That was 2 years ago. And then, I decided to just go deeper and finally coming to the Amazon before when the world was normal. Then everything changed.
So you're from Galicia, you said?
Yeah.
And what brought you to London?
I'm from Galicia. It's a really small part of the north of Spain, kind of a land with a lot of superstition and folklore. So I guess all these things about other worlds and spirits were always with me. But it's a land where there is not a lot of job. It's very poor, very mountains, and there is not. So people, if you want to have a job, you need to move. So first I moved to another city. I started working advertising there, in an advertising company, and after a few years I just felt that world was getting me nowhere. I mean, it was fun. We did a lot of nice shootings, worked for good brands like Red Bull, with athletes, but I was putting my creativity into something that it was not getting me completely fulfilled. It was just working for other ones, and got to a point that I decided, okay, if I don't do anything with this, I'm just going to get stuck here in this lifestyle. And I want to pursue my career in filmmaking, and London seemed like this place where all was happening, media, and artists, and culture. So I just quit all, traveled to London, speaking very little English. It was hard at the beginning. I passed from working in advertising to work doing flyers and leaflets in the station for months.
Did you do the little flick thing with you?
But then slowly I started to do some freelancing, video, and then I end up working in this YouTube channel for 5 years, and I end up doing films there. Also I did a lot of short films. So it was great. London, a lot of connections, a lot of energy, creativity, projects, and all of that. Mm-hmm.
Galicia is in the north of Spain.
North of Spain, just above Portugal.
Right. So it's northwest of Spain. Mm-hmm. And is that part of Basque Country, or that's just next to it?
No, it's next. Yeah. Kind of next. It's like Galicia, Asturias, and Basque Country. But all the north of Spain, we share a lot of similarities in the culture, in the landscape, in how the people is very different from the south. It's a completely different world. So
Yeah, because I know I don't know so much about Galicia, but I know Basque. They say it's like almost like a race that's completely unique. I mean, some people think they came from Atlantis, or but even like the language, the culture. There's things that are very unique that you don't find anywhere else in the world. So
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know enough to, but yeah, they have like a completely different language. You don't know what the roots are, and they also had like this feeling of being different. There was a lot of terrorism, even, and a lot of conflict between Basque and the rest of Spain. In Galicia, the roots are more Celtic. We used to have like a kind of trade with Ireland and all of that, so the folklore is very similar, even the music with the pipe. There is all settlements with all this Celtic, and you see all these spirals and all these tree scales and symbols of, so that's there. But yeah, all the north of Spain, kind of everyone has his own individual, his region has his, are very different, and it feels different. Ours in Catalonia, they feel different, So yeah, but everyone feels different in a different way as well. But yeah.
And growing up, that was something that had an impact on you, just kind of this mythology and folklore.
Yeah, I never realized until I left. It was always taken for granted, but it's just in the culture. It's not that we have rituals, and that's lost, which is a pity. Like sometimes you travel to the Amazon to find this connection to nature where you may have it where you are, But it's just the traditions were very superstitious. Of course, it's mixed with Catholicism, but there is a lot of rituals that we do. Also, celebrations in summer with the fire, with these things. They was around. Of course, it's not at the level that is here. It's very diluted. But then when I left, I realized that was quite weird for the rest of the people. Maybe somebody that lives in Madrid, in Spain, they don't share the same vision. And I guess that kind of just grows in you since you're a kid, and also, there is a lot of, with this superstition and legends and spirits and, like a bit of fear as well. So yes, it had an impact with me, and this is something that I would love to, now that I learn a bit more about, like shamanism and plants and this, it will be amazing to get back there and see what is left, because that's been lost. But I know there is some projects as well of people trying to find, because there was a lot of plant work there and a lot of the same. So
yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I think it's a similar thing for a lot of people when they come down. It actually, this kind of work ends up reconnecting them to their roots in an interesting way, and seeing the origin and the essence. And I mean, because like with the Celtic cultures, I mean, the Druids, they were very shamanic, and I think even their language was built around ideas of trees and these reverence for these trees. And I would imagine doing things like diets and actually, even all throughout Europe, the persecution of the witches, because they were actually the curanderas, and working with plants. And I think I mentioned to you this book that I've been reading, the Immortality Key. It's really all about that. And yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, definitely.
So you ended up, how did you get involved with London Real?
So actually when I was doing my flyer work with the leaflets, I was spending a lot of time in the streets, and I need to learn English. So kind of looking for psychedelic things in YouTube, I stumbled upon this podcast. It was, I think, an interview with Rupert Sheldrake. And I was just listening this more and more, and just getting fascinated by, because in Spain, podcast at that time was something that it was not even in my radar. I didn't even know about Joe Rogan back then, was something, and I was fascinated by the power of the conversations and how open they were, and also the story of this banker that in that moment was kind of doing this kind of free, and it was very, very interesting for me. So I just reach out and say, if you need any help with this, I'm a filmmaker and I'm here and I really like what you're doing. And kind of it was amazing because 2 days passed or something like that. I did not get any answer. And then I was walking in the streets of London and I just found this guy with the camera, Brian, the host, shooting himself like a vlog. For example, I was like, what? So I just I just talked to him like, I wrote you 2 days ago. Yes. Come tomorrow to my studio and we talk. And then since then, we start to work together. At the beginning, it was very, very like this, like it was a room, like IKEA table, and some equipment, and this guy just interviewing his friends. And then slowly by slowly, it grew into a media company. I think at some point we were like 18 just in the office, and it was beautiful to see all this progression and this explosion of this thing growing and growing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I guess it was just lucky or something else, but yeah, it was incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was familiar with Brian in London Real, but I didn't realize the extent of the kind of the interviews they were doing. When you sent me the link of Rosalind, it was a YouTube one, and then to see the full interview, you had to go to the website, and I was scrolling through their interviews, and I mean, there must be hundreds of them now, and like a lot of really interesting people I respect, and I've listened to on other shows as well. So that's really interesting. So how did the film Reconnect come up?
With the film Reconnect, so we start with this format of podcast like you're doing now, but at some point when we start to have a bit more of resources and time, I was very interested in doing the next step. It was like doing films, how can we use these people that we are having a connection with and maybe go deeper, going to visit them. So it was always like a mix of documentary, podcast. It was, like quite free. So we did a few films. We did the first film with a bodybuilder called Dorian Yates, another film with Tito Portal in Israel, and it went very well. And then we had Dennis on the show. When he came to London to some guests, it was kind of, we were not going to have it. I was so disappointed. Then we finally have it. It was amazing. I met one of my idols, like just the symbolism of that for me was, wow, like what is this? I'm just a guy from Galicia that read the book of this moment and this, and now so Dennis is amazing, and it was really good to meet him. And so since that moment, like, wow, when I need to do something with Dennis, we need to do something with Dennis. So I was the guy always in the office, hey, let's do this with Dennis. So I put different projects to do with him, and during the years it changed, but he came back to London again. We did another show with him that was working instead of being in the studio. We worked through Hampstead Heath. This is a really big park of London, so that was in nature and having it was like a moving conversation. So we start to have kind of more and more insight inside his mind, and I was kind of reading his ideas and putting some kind of script together, and then just trying to convince Brian to do it for years until it happened. There was this opportunity. Dennis was in Soltara for 2 weeks. We just finished a film with Brian, so it was a kind of a moment that it was like, wow, it's too early to start another thing, but we went there, and we spent 2 weeks with Dennis in Soltara, having ceremonies and integration and talks, ceremonies, integration, talks, walks, and that was kind of the genesis of the film. And then we came back, and like, okay, we have this footage and these ceremonies is amazing, but like we never wanted to do another ayahuasca film. Like, okay, I'm going to the ayahuasca. Oh wow, this is so great. What happens after? So it was a kind of a struggle. It's like the second act of the film. It's like what happens? So I guess organically things just happened. We wait. There was nothing. to do, like what is going to happen. But then it's like more or less I realized that okay, what was the second act is like is the integration of this experience, what happens when you come to London. So, and you know, like in the jungle it's all great, but what happens when you come back to the machine, no, to London, all of this. And all of this was at the same time that London was with all this Extinction Rebellion and all these ecological the demonstrations and all of this. So it was kind of a vibe that I was really into it. And it was like all the Danish message that is all about nature and communication with nature and this and that. So I kind of put all together, and also Brian's family and this and that. So it was kind of another year of shooting and figuring out what was this thing. So at the end, we kind of have something there, and we decide to be very real and vulnerable about what happened with this. And I think that was very valuable in a way, you know, like kind of showing that it's not just the ceremony and the plant, is the work starts when you also get back to your world, and what are you able to bring back. As Terence also said, like, you know, the role of the shaman is to bring something back, and what to do with that. If it's just the vision, it's just the vision, you know? Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people resonate with also the story of the family and how the human side of this journey. That was very important as well for me, to not just being the ecological film preaching about this, but also bring it more into a more human layer. So it's kind of a fractal of it's like all together. There's a lot of things in that film, but you know, like when you're playing with psychedelics and with plant medicine, it's always a lot of things. So that was a bit the process was really long, painful for me, painful for Brian, but really brave for Brian, and courageous as well to be so open, because I think that's one of the most beautiful parts of the films, is the vulnerability of him and how he's able to share some stuff that actually the people can see, oh wow, it's like that's happened to me as well. We're not just superheroes, and it's not just light. There is a lot of darkness as well, and a lot of mess up things.
Mm-hmm. So was that a desire he had, was to really work with ayahuasca and go through that experience? And
yes, he always wanted to. He tried, and ayahuasca was at the core of the show at the beginning. Funny enough, the first shows, probably one of his shows that is kind of ayahuasca, My Heart of Darkness or something like that, is probably one of the first pieces online talking about ayahuasca in terms of before and after. Mm-hmm. So that was a really popular show, and a lot of people resonate with him. So it was always on his mind, and this was amazing that for him did a lot in that moment. He made him connect with his family and this and that. But then it got entangled into this. Of course, the responsibility of the business was a lot, you know, on him. In that moment, I don't know if he wanted fully, but it was opportunity to make this film. So I push a lot, I guess. But yes, he wanted, otherwise he would never do it. But yeah, it was a lot of resistance. Mm-hmm.
And so you guys went down to Costa Rica, and you sat in ceremony as well with the group?
I only have in the last ceremony, just to know. During during the film, I was just focusing on directing. I just was a bit afraid of taking that and changing all of that. Then when I tried, like, I should have it first. But I guess it is what it is. I just have in the last of the three.
And was that the first time you had
my first time with ayahuasca? Yeah.
And what was that like? Was it?
Wow,
Because it was something that you had been interested in for a while.
Yeah. Imagine the setting and the story in my mind. Like it's like waiting all these years to have ayahuasca, and finally, with this project, with Dennis McKenna in this right place, it was just an incredible experience. It was. All over the place as well. In a way, like my body, I was talking close to Lion King. Everybody was like trying to hold me. As I told you, I just got there with an injury that I did in Jiu-Jitsu. I broke my collarbone like 15 days before, something like that. So that was a lot. I just connect with how profound in terms of body and healing this thing can be. So that was mind blowing for me. And it was just what I needed. That experience just showed me what's coming all together, and I don't know. It was very, very deep.
And you were working with Shipibo in that ceremony.
Yeah. There was in Soltara. They were working with a Shipibo couple.
Was that the first experience you had with
Shipibo? Yeah. I did not know enough about the culture or anything like that, and even when I was searching for the film, kind of I heard about the Icaros and all of this, but I to be honest, I was not aware of what I even not aware what that is now, but it was mind blowing to feel it, and also have an interview with them and talk with them, and that was my first contact with that culture, and it was something that I wish I researched more before the film, but also I think it just is good as how it was, because now I can do more projects more into that direction or something like that.
Mm-hmm. So you had started Jiu-Jitsu before then?
I started Jiu-Jitsu, kind of one year, a few months before that. Yeah.
And what was the impetus to start Jiu-Jitsu? What was the calling?
Funny enough, I started yoga because for me, I always neglect a bit all my life. I neglect a bit my body and my physical reality. I was always in my mind reading films, books, video games. I was very angry, and even at the beginning with my experiences with psychedelics, it was all about that. It was all about transcending this physical plane and going to the spirit world and seeing what I want to see, what Terence is talking about, and these dimensions of this science fiction stuff, and it was with one experience of Changa that I did on my own, and that obviously my intention was, I want to know more about this spirit world and blah blah. And I got it was very, very, very strong. My body started to move in really weird ways, stretching. I noticed my breathing was doing some breathing that like I didn't know enough about the time, but it was yogic breathings, and I was starting yoga in that moment, but like the asanas I was doing that moment, I was not. It was the first time I was doing it, and I could feel that my body was kind of moving on his own. It was not me, and the message of that trip was more like, it's like this is the spirit world. Your body is what you have. There is nothing more magical than this. Mm-hmm. Like this is like the path to spirituality, to using this machine that you have, and this is the opportunity that you have to be human. And so that kind of flip my reality. So I started to do yoga at the beginning, and then I started to get involved with the work of Fido Portal through London Real. And this guy also, we shot with him, and he's a martial artist that he's a mover. He combines martial artists with yoga, with dance, with everything. So we went to one of these workshops with him. After doing a film, a kind of a reward, the team went to the workshop, and that also was another level of physicality, moving with somebody. and improvising more than yoga. That like kind of I can have a glimpse of what that could be. So after that workshop, I was thinking, I need to do something else. I need to do something with. I want to start to move with somebody, with more people, not just the yoga thing. So at the beginning, I was thinking about dance or capoeira or this and that, and try capoeira was not my thing. And then, funny enough, Brian recommended me, well, you need to try Jiu-Jitsu. And I never watched an MMA fight, or never more than I was involved through London Real with this thing, and I didn't know what this thing was. I show up in one of the classes, and the instructor was putting me in a triangle. I said, "What are you doing with your legs? What is it?" And like that, I got completely hooked from the first day. It was incredible. This is the thing that I was looking for. And then I started to train in London. And yeah, until today, more or less. Now I'm training a bit less here, but it's been an amazing journey. It's given me so much. I'm so grateful to stumble upon this. That's magical.
Mm-hmm. What do you find it's given you, Jiu-Jitsu?
So, well, first of all, the connection you made with the people in Jiu-Jitsu is just beyond words. It's very healthy to touch people more when you live in London. That you are kind of almost like a phantom going through the streets. The people doesn't even look into your eyes or don't say hello, and it's so many people that you feel so disconnected from everything. So I think that was part of the hook at the beginning, kind of just this hugging people or touching people and knowing people. I don't even know the names of the guys of my Jiu-Jitsu club, but when you roll with somebody, you know him, man. And I think that was a big part of it, at least at the beginning, and still is. I mean, now I'm traveling and just going to the different Jiu-Jitsu clubs. It's amazing as well to meet people in that way. And then also kind of, I wouldn't say the fight, but being in this, it's risky, it's difficult. And it takes a lot of discipline to continue doing, because sometimes you feel that, wow, this is too much for me, this is very difficult, what I'm doing, so in a way it's like a play with your ego that is really good. Sometimes it raises your ego, sometimes it just humbles you down, and it shows you a lot how you are in these moments where you are about to give up, and sometimes you give, sometimes you don't give up, but knowing yourself in these stressful situations also is very revealing of who you are. Also, breathing, that's what I do as a white, very new blue belt. I think that my focus was on the breathing, learning how to breathe and learning how to in these stressful situations, instead of panic and react at the beginning, just taking your time to first of all breathe. And then this is something that it's very easy to be moved into life. When you have a stressful situation, remember to breathe first instead of start to running away and even in ceremonies, coming back to this breath, or yesterday when we were doing this temazcal, it's like a struggle, but if you breathe, if you are with your breath, you are fine. So that's something that also helped me a lot in ceremonies when things get really, really difficult. And I always remember being smashed by this 100 kilos guy. It's the same. Just breathe, and I will find a way to sneak out from this if I can. And then it's just fun. It's fun. It's an amazing dance. It's an amazing way to spend your time. I cannot think better ways. I don't know.
Yeah, you mentioned Temazcal, and we did a Temazcal yesterday, and I mean, that for me is such amazing medicine. It just, I mean, it's physically very cleansing. There's a ritual around it, the singing, but also for the mind. I mean, I just find it so amazing because all these doubts come up, and I think one can really see how the mind is just, I can't do this, it's too much, it's too hot, I'm gonna die, I don't want to be the first one who leaves, da 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 da. But then when it's over, it's just, there's this sense of peace and health. And so what was that like for you? Because that was your first Temazcal.
Yeah, this is my first Temazcal. I mean, I thought I was ready because I did some kind of sauna experience before, like I mentioned, the Russian banya, that is also hard, but this was another level. And from the 5 minutes too, it was like, what I'm going to do? And at the beginning it was like, like I could see my mind trying to figure out how much time is going to be this, how can I, what can I do? But as you say, like the group is there, and you see like this woman and this like they are not quitting, I'm not going to quit, so again was when the first one was really hard. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know, I was really chaotic. My mind was unable to focus. But then they opened the first door and said, okay, at least now it's going to be 4 times this. So I was really not scared, can I do this? But at least I knew how, I had like a pattern. So the second one I was just in child's pose with my face in the ground, and there I connected with the breathing, and it was kind of, okay, I think I can do this. If I'm in the breathing, I can do this. And then after the second one, they give us the water, and that changed it all. From that moment, I knew that I was going to finish. So that's the last 2 were more easy, not easy, but yeah, as you say, it's like you discover who you are, and you finish, and it's not like, but you feel good for what you are achieved. It's like and there is this sense of power that you did this. And today I did my meditation in the morning, just mindfulness breathing. It was so easy. It was like, wow. I was shook like that. It's like so yeah, it was an incredible ritual. Beautiful people, how they did it, and how the attention to detail, and how everything matters. How you enter to the place, or how you honor the rocks that these little things, I think, make a difference. It's different. I don't think it will be the same if you go to a sauna in London with the same temperature, but without all these containers. Mm-hmm. So what an amazing medicine. I can't wait to do it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a fascinating thing because, I grew up very interested in like the North Native American cultures, and when I was very young, it just seemed to me like there was often in many of these cultures, probably all of them, like a deep reverence for nature and the things of nature, and this idea that even a rock, there's an aliveness to it. It's everything is alive, and even something that looks static and still and hard and cold, that there's a spirit to it. And as you said, I think that's something that's interesting about the Temazcal, is when each rock comes in, there's actually a reverence of like, this is a curandera, this is a teacher, it's giving us something, and it really is, right? Because without that rock, there's no Temazcal. And as you said, I think some of these things are hard to break down in kind of a scientific or rational way, like, is this thing alive, but just that act of having reverence to it and actually saying thank you, it does. It changes the experience, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, that's the problem, no, with our civilization, and how disconnected we are from nature. Like we are not part of it, or that we are better, or we are trying to dominate, or we objectify these things because we can use them. and that lead us to where we are no, and that I think not only psychedelics but shamanism at its core. Like yesterday, there was no medicine involved, but it's just more than medicine. It's how you approach reality, and it's like you are not above anything. You are just part of this. This is amazing to live in the valley and see that this is kind of in the culture, at least much more than we're in London, you know. Mm-hmm. And I think this is what all these tools can now have a revival of this, and maybe heal our relationship with nature, heal our egos, humble us down. It's like when you are paying reverence to a rock, you cannot have a good ego. It's like a rock, you know, like, but thank you, rock. So yes, I think this is the power of all of this, just trying to take us out from our identities and individuals that are just feeling superior or better than anybody, anything else.
Well, it's interesting because I think something like living in a city like London, or I mean most cities, I mean even towns. I mean even when I go to Cusco, a lot of people have never been to the valley, which is just outside of Cusco, and there's almost I think part of it is maybe a fear of nature. Some is almost like a kind of a classist thing, like, well, that's just for poor people. Or, well, why would I go out there? I noticed it in Iquitos. You know, Iquitos is, I mean, it's a city. It's a fairly big city in the jungle. But a lot of people in Iquitos had never left Iquitos. Like, not even really into the jungle. Like, maybe a little park or something near there. There's I think that there is a disconnect, and as you said, it's one of the beautiful things about living here or staying in the valley is you go in a half hour somewhere and you can be in a place where there's nobody. I mean, you look around and there's no people. You go high enough up and there's no mammalian life, there's no animals, there's no insects. And it's silence. And it's this very, if one isn't used to it, it's this very strange thing. And almost like medicine, like Temazcal, the mind can also start to, like, you know, you see like a storm come in, and if it starts to rain, you're like, oh shit, like I am nothing right now. I am nothing. That's the thing. Who knows if I'm going to make it back? I mean, you know, the temperature drops like that. You start getting really cold. You're 4 hours away from the nearest person, and I think that is something that's disconnected us and is at the root of a lot of our problems. And I spent some time in Mongolia. And that's where I first got interested in shamanism, and it's kind of a long story, but I was on my own for a long time. I had this horse and was going around Mongolia. And Mongolia, there's stretches of it that are just empty. I mean, you don't see people potentially for days. And I remember I was up on one of these mountains one time, and I just remember looking, and as far as I could see was mountains, and it was just stillness, because it was kind of above the tree line. So again, there was no, you know, kind of tangible life, and again, just silence. And it was almost this religious experience of just looking, and I just felt this humility, and almost understood how these practices like shamanism arose in places like that. Because again, like that rock isn't affected by the rain or the cold or, you know, a huge storm or a hurricane. It's there. And yet the human is very fragile. And so it's one of these interesting things, because even with climate change and for me, there's also a duality to it, because on the one hand, it's real. We do affect the earth. But I think also that mindset that you were talking about, that like we can dominate and we can control, I think when people really go out into the wilderness, or if anyone has ever, been in the ocean and an undercurrent takes them under, you just realize like the power of water, the power of nature. It humbles everything, and I think ultimately whatever we do to nature is more what we're doing to ourselves. If we pollute the water, if we pollute the air, it's us that's affected by it because we need that to live. We're not removed from nature. Like nature allows us to survive, and if we mess it up, well, it's just gonna come in. But
yeah, and what like what you are mentioning, I think like this virus is being a teacher as well in this sense of humble us down, humility, like, oh, you think you are running the show, but just this thing stopped the world like that, and all your plans and all your stuff and this is nothing, with what can nature can do. So, like in a more like romantic way, I like to see this situation as kind of nature, maybe teaching us like a lesson here, and I think one of the big teachings is humility. It's kind of, you are not running this show. It's like stop and think about it. So in a way, this is also the power of nature as well. Like not just the mountain, but these things like this virus.
Yeah, and finding balance. It's something that I think so many of these cultures were really trying to preach and to live and embody, was finding balance. I mean, here I'm no expert. I'm actually, I think next week going to talk to a Cerdo woman. I don't know if you've heard of the Cerdo, but there's some of the people from around here who live up in the mountains. And they have a very ancient culture, but they call the Apus, some of these mountain peaks, and they're making despacho, they're making offerings to them to try and maintain some balance, because I think there was this knowledge that yes, at any moment nature can come and so how do we live in harmony? How do we find a balance to to give and because we take so much, we take oxygen, we take food, and we use the wood to build the house, but how do we get back in that way to create harmony? And it's a fascinating thing. So when you were when you were in Costa Rica, you were working with the Shipibo. That was the first time. Was that something that drew you to come down to the Amazon to work with them again?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean, Peru was always in my mind. Even when I was in Spain before coming to London, my idea was, no, I'm going to go to Peru to try ayahuasca. Didn't know anything about Shipibo. Didn't know anything about the different cultures that they work with ayahuasca. Then I started to know a bit more in the preparation and during the film. But then, after having my first experience with them, it was kind of a call to keep working with them. And it's the only ayahuasca ceremonies I had was with Shipibos. So then I start when after the film, in the film was when I start to know more about what the dieta was and what is the process of the dieta. So that got really my attention. I was like, wow, I really want to try that. And just one day, also kind of by accident in Facebook, I was scrolling and I see a picture of Angela, that was the Shipibo woman where I had the experience in Soltara. And oh wow, that's Angela, what's going there? And just I clicked there, and then I found this place that it was a picture from this place called Psychonauta Foundation, and oh wow, they are doing dietas. Can I do a dieta as a Westerner? I kind of was like that. Wow, this is my place. So I started to research more about the place. I really resonate with the writings and texts that the guy was doing from there. They were working with Shipibo, and that just felt right. That felt that was the place. So I kind of March last year quit my job in London, kind of I left the door a bit open. No, I will come back in 3 months or 4 months. I don't know. Everything will be the same. Blah, blah, blah. I traveled when the world was different place. Traveled through Brazil, and I wanted to go through the Amazon and get to Iquitos. And at the beginning was great, having the time of my life in the jungle and nature. And after London, life with stressful work was incredible. But then suddenly all these news start to appear, like global pandemic and borders closed. I mean, every border was closing just a day before after I passed. Brazil, Colombia, this and that. And I got to Iquitos in the day that. Just 20 minutes after the president was on TV declaring the state of emergency. Probably was one of the last boats that arrived to Iquitos. And that night I was in a hostel and I was like, what is going to happen? Can I go to the retreat or I'm going to get stuck in Iquitos? Like so close to this. But luckily the people of the retreat got me the next day. And then in 2 days I was in my dieta. Just isolated from the world that it was kind of melting down before me, and just had this beautiful month of beautiful and difficult month of just being. Was difficult after I didn't know what was happening with the world and I couldn't check anything. So it was just very present at the beginning. All this more than me kind of what is going to happen with the species, what is this global thing that we are passing into, and ayahuasca, having ayahuasca ceremonies there, and my mind was there. But like a lot of the things that I was kind of receiving, it's like this is a way to balance things. Kind of this is good in a way. Kind of is. Not good or bad, this is an obstacle that we need to pass. And I have an experience with Bob Insana, the dieta, and it was just beautiful. And a lot of what I had to practice was, again, this breathing, okay, my mind is just going there to the fear, to what is happening to my family, are we going to be good? It's like, come back to the breathing, come back here, it's all good. And yes, like 1 month passed, and then I finished my dieta, and the world is still in lockdown, and the retreat was almost empty, and but I just felt okay, I'm going to stay here. They were very nice that allow us to stay with them. And then we just start to live in the jungle, more like kind of in a community, just helping between ourselves and just living this new reality. And it was an amazing time. I spent there like 7 months, and just it was not just the dieta, just the jungle itself and the life there. It just taught me so much. In just appreciation and content and living with less, after a life of excess in the city, excess of work, excess of things to do, excess of even culture, or even in London Real, having always new guy or new thing, new self. This was a moment of all is gone. It's like I'm in Nauta in Iquitos. It's nothing there. Nothing. 8 people where I live with them 8 months. In London, I don't even cook. I had always more important things to do on my project. How am I going to spend 20 minutes of my day cooking for my own? I just call Deliveroo and I have this. That was my mindset, and that's the mindset that a lot of people has in the cities. And here, you spend 3 hours going to the market and coming back with but just be it got to a point that I finally surrendered to all my plans, and okay, this is it. And by surrender and by not being focused in my big things and my things to do, I was able to be present. And when you're present, as my friend Mundo says, you have presents, gifts gifts, like nature, life, you're open to the small things. So, like it's funny, but, like just learning how to cook, learning how to have meals together as a family, and like just being there instead of doing. So, yeah, and like, and the jungle is, like even if you want to have computers, the jungle, we eat that, like it's kind of the cure for materialism. You cannot have your big things. So it was an amazing, like it's just the opposite of my life in London. Now again, it's a balance. I also want to. I'm now starting to come back to do things, new projects, but remembering that things are not only important, because I got really stuck in London in the mission, and London are doing this so great. I mean, we're working with these people and we're putting this nice media in the world, and this is the most important. And all these small things, I was neglecting them, even relationships, or even myself, even, just having time to yourself. So, funny enough, be careful with what you wish for. That was the the reason why I left, and then I have to, okay, take it. Now experiencing it, and yeah, it was amazing. I already miss the jungle a bit, like even here in Dubai it's great as well, but I also can see in my mind, events, things to do, and this and that, and distraction, and then when you are in the jungle, there is nothing to do, there is no distraction, so all these things came up. It's like it's a big ceremony, like, and you are with yourself and with. So, yeah, of course, we have phones and we can get distracted, but like it's another way. It's like it's more. Yeah, it's more. You do the work, and when you live in these communities, like you need to learn. You learn about relationships because you cannot escape this. Like these are the people that you are living with. It's not that. Okay, today I don't call you because I'm pissed off with you. I'm living with you, and we need to deal with this situation here. So. Like it's amazing. First time for me as well that I'm living in community, and that I'm experiencing this. And just the fact that the house that you are living, the tambos are with mosquiteras. You don't have even windows, and like it's this. Even in a way, not your privacy, but like it's all open there in a way. Even like if you have a bad day, you're going to infect the rest. So. It's been very revealing to live there like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned this idea of the kind of the jungle consumes everything, mm-hmm. And I remember in the beginning, because there's no like trash can mm-hmm. where a trash company comes and picks it up, and I'd have like a T-shirt or something that got ripped, and I was like, oh, what do I? And I just kind of throw it out, but there was a part of me that felt bad, like I'm kind of just littering. But a few weeks, a month later, it's gone. It's dissolved. It's the mold is eaten it. The insect. It's and it's fascinating because I was talking in the last podcast to my friend Brian, and it's something that I've always found very interesting is in the jungle. For a long time, a lot of outside thought was that these people were always just these primitive hunter-gatherers kind of living in the jungle, and yet there was this technology of working with plants which seemingly was very advanced, and I think there was a lot of question, well how does that happen? And I think one of the interesting things is that the way maybe archaeology or anthropology was looking at things, because if you go to Egypt, for example, right now it's a very dry climate, even though it didn't necessarily always be like that, but you could find things, you could find objects, and you're like, oh wow, this is very old, and we can theorize that. But in the jungle, that doesn't exist. There's nothing physically that really lasts. And what Brian was saying, one of the ways that kind of the outside world has been able to deduce that actually there were very old cultures, very old civilizations there, was through things like language, which is fascinating because it's not an artifact. It's not something you can like hold in your hand and analyze and say, oh, this is... But through looking at language, you can begin to trace back and see how things are formed, and even the things that we may not think about, like soil or transforming landscapes. Through observing that, one can also begin to see that there were these very large cultures, civilizations that were actually terraforming the land and creating particular types of soil that were beneficial. And it's really fascinating. I mean, one of the early, I think he was Spanish, Orellano, I think was his name. He was one of the first guys to go down the Amazon, and he actually described these huge civilizations. And when he went back to Spain or Portugal, and he was trying to raise money to go again, but it took I don't know, a decade or more, and then by the time other people started coming a few decades later, all they saw was the jungle, and they said, well, this guy, he's just bullshitting us. He just wanted more money, and for a long time he was considered a fraud, a fake. But now, through more modern research, they're showing that actually what he said was probably very true. And
that's amazing.
Yeah. So, what was that first dieta like for you? Did you have an idea of what that would be, and did it kind of follow that, or it was very different in the end when you actually did it?
Well, I read and I was informed about what dieta is, so I was expecting the isolation. I was expecting all of this. I was really curious about what it is to relate to a plant in this level, and yes, you read accounts of people doing it, but also everyone at the end has his own experience and is different. So I really wanted to try that on my own. And when I got there, I did not have a plant assigned. I wrote my intentions of the diet. There was some problems with relationship that I want to explore, but it was more curiosity more than anything, and also I wanted to experience myself without any of the things that defined me. Like what happened, what is left for me when I take out my family, my relationship, my books, my music, my culture, event of London, my career, everything. Like I wanted to see what is left. So that was part of my intention once when I went there. And then I went there and we had a first ceremony without pre-dieta. And then the shaman after that ceremony assigned me Bobinsana. I did not know anything about this plant or anything like that. And I asked him, like, what am I going to learn from this? The plant will teach you, don't worry, you will learn things. She pivos. Say, okay. And then we start the day after, something like that. And yes, but that was... I start to feel the plant in a way that was not what I expected. I was expecting I will hear the plant, or I will, I will all these stories. But then I realized that this is something much more subtle, and this is something different. So I could see once my external output and stuff like that, I was tuning into almost another way of being, where you are more like I can't describe it. I just start to even understand the jungle and the noises. It looked like more kind of primal, more like animal, like kind of some things that they were completely shut down in the city, and senses start to appear, and you start to receive information from your surroundings, and yes, and then it was also very physical, and even in ceremony it was sometimes I could feel myself doing weird things and kind of cleaning myself and doing movements that it was not not me. It was kind of more like an animalistic, like kind of even the way I was washing myself in the steam in the water, or like I would see myself more like going into this animal mode way. But also in terms of relationship, a lot of stories that had in my mind related to other people, where there will be some blame or some I'm like that because my father did this, or blah blah blah. Suddenly just flip into more like, well, it was like that. It's like I just wrote a letter. One of my entertainments was writing letters to the people to give them after the diet, and in these letters I just could see how that changed into a much more compassionate story that I was telling to myself in that moment, and it was just beautiful. Then of course you go to ceremony, and in ceremony I just had 2 ceremonies without dieta in my life, so I don't know until what point this is true, but the ceremonies were completely different when I was in dieta, and I could feel the energy or the spirit, or whatever language you want to use, of Bobinsana in there, and I could relate to that energy and call that energy when I need it in ceremony, and just play with it. I really feel that that's an energy that now I can access even today in ceremony. If I kind of call her in a way, my visions, the colors change into a much more purple thing. I say, okay, she's there, and I was really well. It was actually easy in a way, like with Bobinsana was really gentle. There was some darkness and some difficult moments. The third week, it was a bit like the Temazcal, like the beginning I didn't know. At the beginning I didn't know what to do. Oh, mosquitoes, how it's going to be. Then I got more used to. Second week was okay. Did a lot of yoga, meditation, that helped a lot. Third week was the most difficult. Third week was, oh my God, it's like it was just drifting out. I just want to finish. And also the dreams during the data were very amazing, insightful, different kind of dreams. It's not that I have direct messages. I had that more in my second dieta with Chuchuwasi, but with Bobinsana was just the texture, the quality, the nature of the dream was different. I was seeing a lot of colors and animals and listening Icaros, and I was waking up very energized with some of these dreams. Also, I had some really dark dreams where some at night some entities were attacking me, and kind of succubus, sexual dark energies, and dealing with that and protecting myself from that. Have dreams of food, of pizzas, or sex, or this or that. Like, oh, I had a dream about sex. I'm breaking the dieta. What I'm doing, like this was the succubus. It was kind of a sexual dream, and then in the dream I realized, no, I cannot have this. I'm in a dieta. Then I woke up, and then I come back again, and this woman that was in the dream then was like a kind of entity, kind of stalking, like, fuck, get out. Didn't sleep in the rest of the night. Then, but yeah, it was very magical, very different. Then I realized, again coming back to this humbleness, like that the diet maze is a process that most of all makes you humble by also showing you how difficult this process is. But here we are not learning about plants like more the Western university things do it. You are learning from the plants. So you need to learn from a plant, from a Western mind that we think you need to be humble, like you to get to that moment of learning from a plant. So that was a bit my diet. I cannot put it in just one theme, but that was my first month with Bovinsana. That was, it was beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah, I think those are... for me, I think those are qualities that I think when someone goes into dieta, it actually shows that they're very connected. Things like humility, compassion, this idea of wisdom, like seeing things from the other side. Because I think with wisdom, actually what arises is compassion. There's not that clinging to this idea that, I'm right or this person is wrong and this is bad and I'm the good one. It's like seeing things from the other side.
And also it was very important for me because other people, they open the dieta and I can't, but for me just the process and surrender to the process. And I have these rules for something. I don't question them, like it's why I cannot eat this and I can't eat that. So it was also healing in a way to surrender to the rules and not question them in a way that you don't know. You don't know. Let's, like, what do I know? And it's a way to also practice your discipline, or like it's as the teacher, you don't question this. So because I see, I don't think that this is right or wrong because I don't know anything. But like I know other centers that they do dietas when they are talking or they are doing this. So it's like for me, a lot of the value of the process was to shut up, don't do what you want to do. It's about suffering in a way and surrender to these rules.
Mm-hmm. So you did a dieta and then you did a second one at the same time at the same place?
No, then in the same place we stayed, but then after a few months the people left to their town. They took a boat in the middle of the pandemic and they cruised for 5 days. I don't know how they did it. You sit in Farinha. So that's what they went. They went to Pucallpa actually from Nauta. So the second dieta was without them. Was just a dieta that we did with the three of us in a room. There was Mundo that he knows a lot about holding the space, but he was not a Shipibo. It was different. What with Chuchuhuasi was shorter, was 15 days, and that was another thing. I don't know if it was because I didn't have the Shipibos or it was because it's a tree and it's more powerful, but that was not as gentle and soft as Bovinsana. And that felt more like a test, like things were happening and it was like, you need to earn this. If you don't do this, you don't get the... But I also, I kind of I met a girl before, so it was kind of a lot about relationships, this diet, and it was the Chichuhuasi that is known for this male energy, even. So it was a lot about what means to be, it's a very masculine energy and what that means, and it was showing to me what that means in dreams and testing me in dreams, and and I was dreaming a lot in that one. It's like you see my diary, and 3-4 times per day I can have annotations and dreams, and it was a lot through dreams, that one. And also during the day, I don't know why, I just have like this routine that I did every day: exercise, running, going there. It was really like that, pam, like a military guy, but it felt just like a glimpse of what is that energy. I did not connect in the same. I connect, and a lot of the things of that diet, and now what I think I learn now, it's like, what's that? This is this, what was. and also a lot about planning and future, very grounding, very different than Boytown, but very valuable as well. And the experience was very different, not having the shipibo and going to ceremony without the caros and without their energy. It was different. It was very interesting as well to go through that without that, but I think then my next diet will be with shipibos as well. I got more with them. I don't know. I need a shaman or something like that. But yeah.
So then, what was that like? Being in the jungle for such a long period of time, because I was also there, and I mean there was a lot of uncertainty, right? It was like, oh, well, it's going to be 2 weeks, and then it's a month, and then another 2 weeks, and then another month, and then another month.
Exactly. I finished now 2 weeks. This is perfect. Now I do my post dieta here, and it's 2 weeks more because this is exactly what they told me. And then I can follow the rules of the post dieta without any distractions of the external world, and then I will travel to Peru. I will go to the Sacred Valley and to the Machu Picchu, and it's going to be amazing because 2 weeks more. So it got to a point that we were laughing already, and we managed very well to have good energy during all this time. It's amazing. But surrender, that was the practice, surrender to the situation. You are not in control here. You cannot do anything. And surrender, also, it's letting out control. If you try to control it, if you try to support it, it was crashing, anxiety, frustration. So it was a practice on letting go. And what a nice practice, what a nice practice, because at the end, that is what it's all about. As I told you, it's life in the jungle. It's hard, but it's also beautiful to live. You wake up with the sun because it hits you in the face, because you have windows in the face. You go home when you go to sleep. We don't have electricity. We don't have fridge. We need to relate to the food that we consume in a different way, or otherwise it gets wasted. It's just these things that also I think that for the world that we might be living in, if this continues in this direction, they were very useful, community and learning all this, because all what I knew was to do films before. Now at least I know how to cook 3 or 4 dishes. And it's not a joke, but it taught me a lot of what is to be human in the most stripped down way. That's what my life there was. And we keep having ceremonies of ayahuasca as well. Not dietas, but so it was a lot of ayahuasca was part of our life. Not a lot, but maybe once every 2 weeks or something like that. So just being in this process with what is happening and having the knowledge of the plants and the knowledge of the people around was very good. Mm-hmm.
So how do you see yourself moving forward, like taking what you've learned, and is that something you want to continue to do more diets, or go back out? You mentioned some projects you're working on.
So now I will love, one thing that I really want and I feel connected is to Peru, and I want to live here. It feels that even if I can start to get involved in projects, it will be more easy to be balanced in these surroundings that coming back to city. Europe is not an option for me right now, unless something happens with my family or something like that. I'm good here. So my plans are, I want to do media. I want to tell stories. That's what that's my art. That's what I get a lot of happiness in that process of just immerse myself in the creation of a story through video or through other mediums, but usually through video. So I'm starting now to do that. I'm starting a new project. Actually, it will start a YouTube channel as well, but when I'm going to do small documentaries, the first one is a bit all this journey that I was shooting with my phone, with my small camera. So now I'm putting all together. And on the other side, I want to have a balance, and I want to work in this center where I lived. If they opened and we start to have clients again, I would love to help them to run the center and help the people. And that's very important for me, because in a way, like, I'm called to finally work with people, because if I get trapped in the just editing the computer, is just that's what consumed me in London and make me live. So I'm hoping to find a balance between these two things, so and get involved with people around here. I feel that in the jungle there is nothing, but in the valley there's a lot of people that I align with, and people with projects that I will be really happy to help. So if somebody has a project, just write me, because I really enjoy helping people and spreading what I think what I can offer here is to spread this message of what we are doing here through media and through stories. I feel that this is a really good base to find these stories, to find these projects that I can help, as I did with Brian in London Real, but here is more, and now it seems more important than ever to kind of take this wisdom in a way that people maybe in the cities or in social media can relate with more than, that's one of my focus always with my media. It's not just talk to the people that already know a bit of this. It's like, how can I attract my mother to these themes, or to the people that are completely far away, or like that. So finding ways to talk about these processes without putting them out, and trying to find what are the things that they can resonate with, because if sometimes you cannot say to my mother, no, I'm doing a dieta, I'm connecting with the spirit of the plant is telling me, it's like, oh my god, you're crazy. But if you talk with them, finding the way of talking with them, because there is something going on here that I think everybody need, not everybody, but it's something that is primal to the human experience. It's something that everybody should experience in a way, it's a world that has, it's sad, as again Terence McKenna was saying, like going to your grave without having a glimpse of what these experiences are. It's like going to your grave without trying sex, or with, or this is what we are. So I think that everything is in the current situation, and everything is just I just see this as an opportunity to keep pushing these messages, and maybe we will get to a much more balanced society. And what I can offer is what I've been doing, but I also want to get more grounded in the one-to-one work with people. And don't forget that you don't save the world by videos in YouTube, that you can also save the world, and it's more important to help with this one-to-one, and don't forget this. This look into the eyes to somebody, just helping that person. So sometimes, when I was in London Real, oh look, like 5,000 comments, this film changed my life, blah blah blah. But this is a comment like, well, who are you? Like, if you track that people in 3 years, it's like, it really has a change or not. So you can get caught up in that very easily. So my dream is to balance these two things. So let's see.
You mentioned this idea that you really think this work is useful, and you would hope everyone could experience it. What do you think is this work with plants or ceremonies, temazcal, things like these? What do you think the essence of that is really pointing towards, that people would really benefit by working with these things?
That's a hard question.
Big question.
I think by working with these things, you realize that you are just a part. You are just tiny part of something bigger than you. Call it whatever you want to call it: nature, Gaia, God. I don't know, but it's a way to cure your individualism in a way, and like I really feel that like we have a big purpose, not just as a species, as everything in this planet, and these things just make you realize that it's a mystery. You don't never know what the purpose is. You don't never know. You're just a monkey here that is just a tiny part of it, but you're a tiny part of something. And I think just having that feeling that maybe in the past that was given by religion or by things that now we neglect or we disrespect. I'm talking obviously from a more Occidental, Western point of view. That is also the cause of most of our problems. So that's why I'm talking from that, and is what I am as well. But just having that feeling that that you are not just an individual, you are just not alone. And I think a lot of the healing that we are seeing in depression or in anxieties, that these things that is by just taking out from your ego, your individuality, your story, and making you be part of a bigger story. And if we are all part of this bigger story, maybe we can save the world. I don't know, or something like that. So that's I think is the big thing. Then of course you have healing stories and more specific stuff, and even it's just a new story about what means, not new, it's also old, what means to be human. That is not just what the consumerist and materialistic society is feeding us with.
You mentioned you're working on a project now. Do you want to talk about that, or is it still in development?
Yeah, I mean, I'm starting my YouTube channel. I see this more like a project that will be. I'm calling it Dissolution, and it's a bit this idea that like it's a frame where I can touch a lot of these techniques and more spiritual side of the world, but it will start with this trip, with this documentary, but I want to touch different ways of dissolve your ego in a way. I'm not talking about killing the ego, because the ego is good and we need it, but in a way, how can we do to connect with this bigger story that we are all in, that is not about us, that we are one, is the oldest story, but I'm trying to frame it in a different way. So right now I'm just been putting from the jungle talks to camera, but this will be like a series of documentaries where I will explore from psychedelics to dreams to music to different themes. And I feel that this is the right place and to do it. And it's the first time that I'm going to do stuff with me in camera, and all of this very scary, and that. But it's also interesting. It's an interesting process. So I'm right now finishing the first episode. It will be ready in a month or so. Mm-hmm. So people will be able to check out this solution in YouTube.
Yeah, great. Was there anything you want to touch on that we haven't?
No, unless you have something.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Yeah, if people want to reach out to you, is there a way they can do that?
Yes, my website will be on when this interview will be out. It's my name, luissolarat.com. And as I say, like if somebody has interesting projects or things that they want to collaborate with, I'm open. And yeah, I hope I can help you as well with some of your projects.
Yeah.
This has been great, and thank you for all your attention. And yeah, it's been great to meet you here in the Valley.
Yeah,
So,
likewise. And all of your work is on your website, or will
yeah,
be?
they will be more or less all work. If not in London Real, you can check my last five films. Yeah, but in my website, more or less, all is there.
Yeah. Great, man. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on, and it's been really cool getting to know you and doing Jiu-Jitsu and Te Mascal and stuff. So I hope we continue.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, my friend. Thank you.
My friend. Good.
Okay, everybody, that is it. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Luis. He's a super nice guy, really interesting guy, and I think he had a lot of really interesting things to share. So that's it for this episode. As always, if you're able to support the show, Patreon is a really good option. It gives you some really nice benefits like early access to shows, extended interviews, Q&As, things like that. There's different tiers that you can subscribe to, and that's a really big help. So if you're able to do that, I really appreciate it. To all the people who have done that, I deeply appreciate it. And then also, if you're not able to do that, simply subscribing to the show. So going on the YouTube channel, Universe Within Podcast homepage, hitting the subscribe button, turning on the notification bell, liking the video, and then on the audio version, Apple Podcasts, subscribing and leaving a starred rating and a review. It's a small thing, but it actually really helps. So for everyone who has done that, thank you very much. If you haven't and you can do that, also thank you very much. I have some really good guests coming up. I'm not sure the exact order. There's quite a few, and I'm trying to figure out the order. But hopefully in the next episode, I'll be able to give you a more definitive order of the following guests. But there's some really good people coming up. So thank you for all the support. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I will see you on the next one.
Doom.